Hi class. I'm sorry about that last video being so jerky. I had changed some settings to try to improve my resolution, and what I've done now is I have gone back and changed a few more settings back, and I think the problem was the frames per second. So, but then I've kind of chosen a screen resolution that's a little bit lower, and hopefully this will be a happy medium. So we're talking about Module 1, creating dynamic compositions. And I'm going to repeat a lot of what I had said before, but I'm hoping to make it a quicker video. So where you are now, if you're watching this, you should have watched my PowerPoint presentation on dynamic compositions. So you know what I'm talking about and you're familiar with the vocabulary that I'm going to be using. And if you've done everything on the checklist up to this point, you're up to speed on the project and what we're doing. So what I'm going to show you now is the first step, the preparatory work that you need to do for this project. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our viewfinder and we're going to go through magazines and look for large images like this that we can then take our viewfinder and we can try to crop out some images that make the composition abstracted from its original subject matter, so you don't really know what it is you're looking at. So what our goal is to make a very dynamic composition and make a work of art that is a pen and ink drawing that is an abstract dynamic composition. And so what I'm going to start out with here is showing you some ways to get some dynamic compositions. I think that this one is really interesting. It's some peaches on a grill, and you can move your viewfinder around, and I think that on this one it almost looks like a landscape. If you put this the grill here at about at the rule of thirds mark, or somewhere around there, it kind of starts to look like a landscape. If you draw this, you probably won't really know what's going on or what this really is, and that's part of the goal, is to have a little bit of mystery. But I can also try to start turning the composition. You know, if I want a vertical composition, I can turn this inside of it and look at what happens. Here I'm getting some strong diagonals, and maybe that's interesting. It just depends how you're going to draw that wood. So, you know, if you don't want that much of the wood and you want a little bit more of the grape, you can move this. You can, you know, try all kinds of different things. But the point is, try to make it dynamic and try to think about it the whole time, the fact that you're going to have to draw whatever it is that you're putting in here. Okay? So that's an example of an image that could work out. It could be really interesting. This image, it's some kind of chandelier with glass birds. And what you don't want to do is just reframe it like this and then draw that, because what that is it's a boring composition, first of all, because it's just pretty much central, but then you can also see that it's just a glass bird. And what we want to do is we want to have something that has some mystery. So, you know, does this I think that this image has a lot of potential. It's got these interesting shadows down here. And so if we start to turn it, we start to get some more interesting things going on. I like the way that the shadow, you can play with having the shadow happen with these reflections. Still kind of hard to get something that's super interesting. Maybe that starts to be more interesting. But anyway, this is the part that, this is what we're trying to do here, is trying to find a dynamic composition. was there's another one that I would like to show you. All right, let me try another one here. This one. This is some fabric. There's a little bit of a glare on it. I apologize for that. But with the fabric, you know, with the words here, you want to, if you find an image that has words on it that looks great, you probably want to omit the words and pretend like they were never there. And then you can just use this. I like the shape of that, the space there. So I might experiment with moving that around in my image. Do I want this to be a landscape? Do I want it to be vertical? And, you know, do I want it to have this? This is very dynamic here, this, with it becoming more of a diagonal line. If I can put it on this side, and when I do that, what happens? So it's just a matter of playing with the paper and playing with your viewfinder until you get something that is you feel like is dynamic. This one, I really love this image. I think it has so much potential. If you watched the other video, you saw that, you know, when we start down here, it's got a lot of unity. It's got some variety. It's still fairly interesting, but I think that it's maybe has a little too much unity. If we can introduce some variety by changing this circular, by adding this circular thing to our image, then it becomes more interesting. And then I think introducing diagonals with this image is much more interesting. And it doesn't even have to be super diagonal. But to me, I like it. It's more exciting to me when it's diagonal. What is it if it's landscape oriented? That's interesting. It still has a sense of movement and motion in it. So it just depends on what you're after. I would encourage you to play with it as much as you can. And then once you find something that you really like, and that you feel like, wow, that's it, that's what I want to draw, or that's what I think would be interesting to draw, because we're gonna go through and do this with a lot of images. I want you to get 15 or 20 of these, and you're going to take your pencil and mark it, and then cut it out. Okay, and then we're going to gather about 15 to 20 of these, and we're going to see which ones are the most dynamic. You can upload it to the critique section if you would like to get some feedback on which cutouts are dynamic and which ones aren't. You know, the things we're looking at are unity versus variety. Is there too much unity? Is there too much variety? Too much unity is boring. Too much variety is chaotic. So is there some kind of a balance between unity and variety? Is there the opportunity in your image to vary the line thickness? And you know, here I think there's a lot of opportunity for that, because there's a lot of things, lines of different shapes. You know, is there a balance of geometric elements versus organic elements? Too much geometry or too much organic in one picture can be a little bit boring, a little bit stagnant. So you want to try to strike a balance between geometry and organic, and I think it really makes for a more interesting image. You want to think about the kinds of, you know, if I were to make this into a drawing, what kind of mark making would I use with my micron pen? Would I use, of course I'm going to have regular lines, I'm going to have maybe some areas of black. If I want to have areas of black, where are they going to be? In this image, I think that this plane of this lamp that's darker would be probably all black. And, you know, maybe there are other areas that I might think about stippling. You know, this gray part here could be stippled with a micron pen to get that gray value to come through. And then we have a bunch of really interesting reflections on these, whatever they are, these copper things. And those might have some black. They're also going to have some white showing through. Do you want to stipple the rest to get some value? Do you want to use cross-hatching? All these things can go through your mind as you're looking through your viewfinder, trying to imagine what this would look like as a 9-inch by 12-inch pen and ink drawing. All right. This one is interesting. It's got some, I think we had talked about before, I don't know if you watched my video before, how down here it's kind of interesting in that it's really busy up here, but then as it comes down here, it gets, there's some really interesting negative spaces happening, but at the same time, it's got a lot of unity. It's a little bit, it could be more exciting, right? So if I move it up this way and start to get some of these leaves, maybe I can even turn it upside down, or maybe I can come down here and get some of these leaves. I got to find a way to incorporate some variety in here and make it interesting. So maybe these leaves can come in this way. That could be interesting. So this one has potential. It's just a matter of finding a way, finding something that you find would be an exciting drawing. Okay. To me, so far, this is looking kind of interesting. I don't want, if I do something like this, that means that this part of my, oops, I'm off the screen. This part of my paper is just going to be empty. So I might not want to do that for this assignment, although I think it is an interesting image. I think that I want to activate more of the picture plane. So something like that I think would be more interesting as a drawing. All right, I'm going to keep going. I hope I wasn't off the screen that whole time. Here's a food magazine image, lots of clams. So this has a lot of unity because it's an image of clams that's, you know, swimming in broth. It's just kind of clams over and over, but they do have a variety. This one is open. This one is only a little bit of showing. So they're different. But at the same time, it might be more interesting to try to get some geometry in here. And we do have geometry in the grill area and here in the edge of the pot area. So I also really kind of like this clam that's open. So maybe you can somehow incorporate both. So it's just a matter of finding something that is exciting to draw. Okay, next one. This one from a design magazine, and it's yet another chandelier. It's pretty dynamic because of all these diagonals. There is a lot of unity. The idea would be, if you wanted to do this as a drawing, would be how can you introduce, how can you make this exciting in pen and ink? There's a lot of different values in here. And one thing I realized when I played with it before is that up here you have some interesting shadows that I think once you get those in there, it becomes a lot more interesting. Those could be black, or they could be stippled, and other things could be black. It all comes down to making interesting choices for your drawing. So that's why I keep emphasizing keep your drawing in mind while you are trying to do different things. If anyone is here from my class, would you let me know if this resolution is working out for you? The last one I tried, I watched it and I thought it was okay. So if you're here and you want to say anything, let me know. All right, so I think we're starting to get the idea here. I do like having the round part in it, but I can't seem to get that. Okay, there we go. Now here, if I can have a little bit of this round part that's a different size and still get some of these shadows in here. You probably can't see them from there, but there are some really interesting shadows. You can see them better over here, but there's some over here also. And I think that would be an interesting thing to play with in a pen and ink drawing. Here we talked about this, how we wouldn't want to just do this. Please don't do that to me. What I want something interesting that's dynamic, and this, it might look like what it is. So maybe it's not the best thing to do, and there's a lot of line in this that might be kind of difficult. So you might ask yourself, do I really want to draw this? Can I really execute this drawing the way it needs to be executed to look good? All right, and some more of what not to do. This has some extreme unity, and not only that, it's all on the same plane, and so for that reason, it's just as a drawing, I think it would just be kind of boring and designy. It would just kind of look like wallpaper, and everything's on that same plane. There's nothing. You can't really look deep into the drawing, and this is a drawing you would look at very quickly and maybe decide you don't want to stay with it that long because it's not that interesting. So we're trying to really get people to linger and look at our drawings. Another what not to do, something like this ends up being really hard to draw and chaotic. If you think you can draw it, more power to you. You can convince me. If you add some other elements into it, it might become more interesting. Something like this starts to look like a landscape a little bit. If you put the page landscape-wise, I think it's a little less interesting that way than it is this way. That one is pretty interesting, I think. Whereas this would not be interesting. This would not be interesting. One other thing not to do, don't find a piece of artwork in a magazine and just frame it out and just copy it. We don't want to copy anybody's artwork. That's not really what this is about. This is really more about taking a photograph and cropping it so that your subject matter is abstracted, and turning that abstract subject matter into an interesting and mysterious drawing. Try not to just crop out somebody's face. That's not abstract. Try not to try to avoid just cropping out a landscape. Because it's going to look just like it is. It's going to look like a tree drawing, and it's going to be really hard to draw. These leaves in here are just teeny. So don't punish yourself unless you're really good at that. Here would be another example where, this is what the photographer did. and then you come in and say, okay, I want to draw that. Well, that's not really changing it at all. That's just going to be a smaller landscape, and it's going to look like a landscape. And, you know, how are you going to draw with a pen and ink, you know, a micron pen? How are you going to draw all these teeny little details? So you have to have a plan. You have to think about it. You know, there might be some way to make this a little more abstracted and more interesting. If you turn it some way where it's not recognizable, but you're still stuck with the task of trying to figure out how you're going to draw this as far as the details go. Remember, this is color, and we're going to be using black and white, so you've got to think about how things are going to translate. Okay, we're avoiding anything like this. This is like that beer can, just not interesting. Even that, just not interesting. Not enough details. Alright, Starbucks. We want to avoid something like that. This is a central composition. It's got something recognizable in it that is somebody else's art. So all of the above, don't do it. Alright, so this is just kind of a recap of the other video. The other video is unfortunately very choppy, but there is a lot of good information in it, so you might want to watch both. I just wanted to put this in here so that we have you can actually see what I'm doing here without it getting choppy. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to redo the part where I talk about the what you're going to put in your sketchbook. So what we've been doing is we've been going through and we've been cutting out, we've been finding interesting images and we've been cropping them out. And then we are going to, from those 15 to 20 images, we're going to choose 2 images to do thumbnails of. And once we choose which 2 those are, we might not want to glue anything in our sketchbook until we definitely decide what our large drawing is going to be. But I want you to hang on to all the thumbnails that you, all the images that you cut out of the magazines, because you're going to paste those into your sketchbook. And this is what that is going to look like. This is an example from a student's sketchbook. The different pieces that she cut out. She ended up doing this one. This is a snake. She ended up drawing that one. But this is what your sketchbook will look like. I want you to save all of them because this is your record of your journey on this drawing, and your record to me that you understand what makes a dynamic composition. If it's not dynamic, or if it doesn't follow the rules I've set out, if it's not abstract or abstracted in some way, or that would look abstract as a drawing, I don't want you to put it in your sketchbook. Okay? So this looks good. Alright, now once you've cut out all your I keep calling them thumbnails, the drawings are the thumbnails. Once you've cut out your images, then you're going to, in your sketchbook, you're going to put your image down and you're going to do your thumbnail of that image next to it. This is an example of that, and this student did a great job with her thumbnails. She started out, you can see the marks here. That is a grid. She put a grid here over her thumbnails, and she put a grid over the cutout. Okay, and what that does is it helps you to more accurately transfer your drawing. You don't have to do it. It's not required, but it's a good crutch to use so that you can accurately transfer something over. And we're going to use a grid again once you get your thumbnail done. We're going to use a grid to transfer your thumbnail drawing up to a 9 by 12. Okay? Because what's happening is you're drawing something really small. It's 3 inches by 4 inches. And your final drawing is going to be 9 by 12. And that's 3 times as large. So there's going to, not only are you transferring over your thumbnail, but you're enlarging it. And the best way to do that is by the use of a grid. You're going to have a grid over your thumbnail drawing, and then you're going to have a grid on your blank paper, and that's going to help you transfer things over. And I'm going to describe that more on the next demo. But by using the grid on the cutout to make your thumbnail, you're kind of practicing that skill, and that's a good thing. Okay, so that's the first set of thumbnails. Here's another student's thumbnails. I thought these were really great. He chose some really interesting images that are all kind of mysterious. He ended up doing, I think he ended up doing the top two. He's somebody who was did one image, and he's like, I really want to see what the other one would look like, and I think he did them both, which is great. I encourage you all to get excited about what you're doing and try more than one thing. Try more than one thumbnail, or more than two thumbnails if you want. So that way you're understanding, or you're choosing the best thing possible. The one thing that I think is really good about his drawings is that he really thought about his mark making. He wanted to increase his variety by including all the different types of mark making into his drawing. So he's got some stippling here, he's got some cross hatching, he's got variations in line thickness, and I don't know, overall it's just a really good job. Oh, we've already seen that one. Let me see if I can bring this one down. Okay. All right. So this one is also good. The top one is, a little bit maybe decorative. I know what it is. I've seen it before. So it has a little less of that mystery that we like to go for in these. The second one, the tomatoes, that was really hard. It was really hard to do that, but I think she did a good job on it. And finally, that last one was my favorite, because I think it's a little bit more abstracted, and I think she just did a beautiful job with that stippling, and that stippling going into the areas of darkness there. Very interesting to me. I think all of these are good, and they would all be good drawings. So I think that's, that's all I have for the sketchbook thumbnails as far as images go. And then I want to show you images for final drawing. Now this person's final drawing, this was such an interesting image she had. She took a picture through a fence out into she didn't take a picture. It was a picture that was very strange and dark, through a fence out to a pasture. There was a cow in there somewhere. But the way she cropped it out was this just really strange, dark drawing that looks like something out of a comic book, and that's what she loves to look at, and she did a great job with it. Also, variation in mark making. She's got stippling. She's got these nice geometric forms that tend to balance out all this organicism here and here. Then she's got the geometric forms that balance that out. She did a good job in balancing the black, I think. This one is has a pretty good balance there of geometric forms, and the circles themselves are a little bit organic. There's kind of that crack pattern that goes throughout. That's interesting, and the diagonals on this make it pretty dynamic. So this one I think is pretty interesting. There's room for a little bit more contrast, and what creates contrast is really just two things placed next to next to each other that are very different. So black next to white creates contrast. So some of these that you see that have these large areas of dark, those areas of dark tend to pop out other areas, and that's contrast. But overall, I think this is a really good one. Okay, we're going to go on and look at this one. This one has some good contrast areas, right? That area of dark around the bat ears. This was actually a bat, and actually several bats hanging from a ceiling. And the student did a good job of cropping it out. And the face is in the center. It's probably hard to see, but there is one bat face in this. And he worked pretty hard to abstract it slightly by not being super faithful to reproducing the features of the bat. It's still there, but you wouldn't know it. To me, it looks like mussels. Like, have you ever ordered mussels at a restaurant, floating in broth? That's what it looks like to me. But he did such a good job with the unity and variety in this. It's a very clean drawing. He's got areas in there where he's got some implied lines. He's got stippling. And the stippling helps to create more value, although overall it's a pretty high contrast image. And this one's a little hard to see at this size. It's a highly detailed drawing, and like I said in the other video, when the student showed me her image, I was like, how are you going to draw that? And she was just like, oh, I can draw it. And I was like, okay. Because it was the first image, I didn't know the student that well, and she had an eye for detail. She loved drawing super busy, super detailed things. For a lot of people, this would be too much, but she loved it, so she told me she could do it. I said, all right, go for it, and she did a great job. There was all kinds of reflections. This diagonal here in the middle is an escalator in a department store, I think, and then there's glass that was, warping images, and overall you can still see the lamps there, which was kind of an issue, but because the rest of the image was so amazing, I said, okay, well, just try not to emphasize the fact that the lamp's too much. And I think it's just a really interesting drawing. So, okay, so I do have some feedback from you guys. Hey, Kimmy, thank you. It is great and clear at 720p. And Mignon, it's good. I'm so glad, because I think that this live streaming is fun, and then I don't have to be stuck uploading for long periods of time if my internet is wacky. All right, well, good. This, I'm trying to think if I left anything out. Kimmy or Mignon, do you guys have any questions for me since you're here? If you do, type it in. And I think that's all I've got for this one. So you can watch both both videos to kind of get, because the audio is good on both. But this one is better visually, and so I'll keep these settings intact for the rest of the semester. And what I'll do next time, the next video is going to be on the process by which we're going to take our thumbnail drawings, the little 3" by 4" drawings, and we're going to size them up to 9" by 12" drawing on that 9 by 12 paper that you have. All right, class, thank you. It's been a long day, and I'm glad we figured out this technical